They called him the Devil of Black Mesa, a man without mercy, without soul. But the devil, they say, was once an angel, and sometimes the cruelest act is the greatest kindness. This is a story of lies that saved lives, and a love born from hatred. The year was 1886, September, the kind of heat that makes men thirst and decisions cloudy. In the Arizona territory, where the Apache still remembered freedom and white men still feared shadows, there existed a place where both worlds collided with the force of thunder. That place was Silver Creek, a town built on dust and desperation, where trading posts smelled of leather and broken promises, and where a young Apache woman was about to lose everything she had left in this world. Her name was Takala Sixkiller, 27 years old, daughter of a man the whites called traitor and the Apache called traitor. She walked into that trading post on a morning that would change her life, carrying a bag her mother had sewn 15 years before, filled with herbs that could heal wounds and cure fevers, sage bundles worth a quarter each, usha root at 50 cents an ounce, yarrow that stopped bleeding better than any white man's bandage, $12 worth of medicine, enough to buy flour, salt, and hope for another month. The trading post squatted at the end of Silver Creek's main street like a toad on a rock. Wooden walls dark with age and smoke. Windows so dirty the morning light came through brown and hesitant. Inside, the air hung thick with the smell of whiskey gone sour, leather curing badly, and the sweat of 20 men who worked hard and drank harder. Cowboys, prospectors, drifters who had found this corner of nowhere and decided it was far enough from whatever they were running from. Takala stepped through the door, and the noise died like a candle snuffed. 20 pairs of eyes turned to her. She wore a simple cotton dress, the kind white women wore, but she had embroidered the collar with Apache designs, sun symbols, mountain peaks, her mother's patterns. Her thick black hair hung in 2 braids down past her shoulders. Her skin was the color of copper in firelight. Her eyes, amber brown and unafraid, swept the room and found nothing worth fearing. She had buried her father 6 weeks ago. Fear was a luxury she could no longer afford. She walked to the counter where Thaddeus Pike stood, a man of 52 years whose belly hung over his belt and whose face stayed red whether he was angry or merely breathing. He owned this place. He owned half the buildings in Silver Creek. He owned men's debts, and sometimes when those debts grew large enough, he owned their silence. Takala placed her bag on the counter with care. The leather was soft from years of her mother's hands, decorated with beadwork in the mescalero style. Inside, the herbs rustled like whispered prayers. "These are worth $12, Mr. Pike," she said. Her voice carried clear across the room, steady as stone. "Same price you paid my father for 5 years. Pike looked at the bag the way a man looks at a dead rat. He did not touch it, did not open it to check the quality of what she offered. He simply stared at her with eyes that held all the contempt a man could pack into a single glance. "I don't trade with your kind anymore, squaw." The word came out thick with tobacco spit. "Your daddy's dead. His credit died with him." Around the room, men shifted in their chairs. A few smiled. Most just watched with the blank expression of people who had seen this play before and knew how it ended. Takala's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed level. "These herbs have nothing to do with credit. They are goods for trade. You know their value. Your witch medicine ain't worth spit." Pike grabbed the bag and threw it. Not at her. Past her. It hit the floor and skidded across dirty planks, spilling sage and roots like scattered bones. A cowboy near the door laughed. Then another. Soon half the room was chuckling, the sound building like distant thunder. "Send her back to the reservation where savages belong," someone called out. A man named Clem, drunk even at this hour. He grabbed a handful of dried beans from a barrel and threw them at Takala. They bounced off her shoulder and clattered to the floor. She did not flinch, did not cry out. She knelt slowly, gathering her mother's bag, picking up the scattered herbs with fingers that did not shake. This was not the first humiliation she had endured. The whites hated her for her Apache blood. The Apache on the reservation had turned their backs when her father chose to work with the army, when he married a woman half Mexican. She was caught between 2 worlds and welcome in neither. Pike watched her crawl on the floor, and something shifted in his red face. Not pity, satisfaction. Your daddy owed me $50 for supplies before he died. That debt's yours now, girl. Takala looked up from the floor, herbs clutched against her chest. He owed you nothing. He always paid his debts. Not to me, he didn't. Pike's voice carried that special confidence men get when they know the crowd is with them, when they know no one will challenge the lie. She opened her mouth to argue, to call him what he was, but the words died in her throat, because the door had opened again, and the trading post, already quiet, went absolutely silent. The man who entered had to duck his head to clear the frame. 6 feet 4 inches of muscle and scarred leather, with a beard that reached halfway down his chest, iron gray threaded through dark brown. His hair hung long and tied back with a strip of rawhide. His face was weathered like canyon stone, all hard angles and deeper crevices, with eyes the color of winter sky. Pale blue, cold, ancient. On his back rode a Sharps rifle, the kind that could drop a buffalo at 500 yards. At his hip, a Colt Navy 1851 revolver sat in a holster darkened by years of use in gun oil. At his other hip, a Bowie knife with a 14-inch blade, the handle wrapped in leather gone black from sweat and blood. He smelled of cedar smoke and bear grease, and the deep wildness of places where civilization had not yet planted its flag. His buckskin coat, stained and patched, hung open to show a chest thick as a barrel. His boots, handmade and worn, barely made a sound on the wooden floor, despite his size. Every man in that room knew who he was. Jonas McHugh. They called him Bear. Some said he had killed 3 men for crossing onto his land up at Black Mesa. Some said he ate raw meat and talked to wolves. Some said he had been an Army scout back in the Apache Wars, but that was before he disappeared into the high country and became something less than human and more than animal. Pike went pale. The drunk cowboy who had thrown beans suddenly found the floor very interesting. The whole room seemed to take a breath and hold it. Jonas walked past them all without a glance, his boots measuring distance on old wood, until he stood directly behind Takala. She was still kneeling, still clutching her scattered herbs. She could feel the heat coming off him, could smell the wildness. She turned her head and looked up, way up, at a face that showed no expression at all. Pike! His voice came from somewhere deep in his chest, rough as gravel scraped over stone. Let go of your hate long enough to do business, or I'll find another store. But he was not looking at Pike. He was looking down at Takala. His pale gaze swept over her kneeling form, taking in every detail. The torn bag, the scattered medicine, the way her hands trembled just slightly despite her best efforts at control. Something flickered across his face, so quick she almost missed it. Then it was gone, replaced by stone. You're Kai-6 killer's daughter. It was not a question. Takala pushed herself to her feet, proud despite everything, and met his stare without flinching. I am. Did you know my father? Jonas reached into his coat. Men tensed, hands moved toward guns. But what he pulled out was not a weapon. It was a piece of paper, old, yellow with age, folded and refolded so many times the creases had worn soft. He unfolded it with surprising care for such large hands and held it up for everyone to see. He owed me $1,500. The words fell like stones in still water. Signing this promissory note 3 years back. Says right here, if he dies, the debt transfers to his blood kin. Takala felt the floor tilt under her feet. She reached out and took the paper from his hand. The signature was there, her father's handwriting, unmistakable. The witness line bore another name, Colonel N.W. Graves, Fort Apache, New Mexico Territory. The date, April 15, 1883. 3 years ago, when her younger brother Ashkey had nearly died from scarlet fever, when they had needed medicine, the white doctors would not give without money up front. This is a lie, but even as she said it, doubt crept in. The signature was real. She would swear to it. My father never borrowed money, especially not from a... From a what? Jonas tilted his head slightly. A white man? A killer? Something that might have been amusement touched his eyes. Your father borrowed it to pay for medicine. Winter of '83. Your brother was sick. Scarlet fever. I gave him $1,500. He promised to pay it back in 3 years with furs and horses. Now he's dead. And you're all that's left. Pike found his voice again, emboldened by having the bear on his side. Colonel Graves himself witnessed it. That makes it legal under territorial law. A rancher near the back, a man named Tom Hutchins, who everyone knew took money from the army to keep quiet about things he saw, stepped forward. The bear's got rights to claim his debt. Ain't no arguing with a contract witnessed by a colonel. Takala felt her world narrowing to the paper in her hands. $1,500. She could work for 10 years and not earn that much. She had no property. Her father's small ranch, 160 acres of decent grazing land near the Mescalero Reservation, had been seized for unpaid taxes 2 months ago. Taxes that had appeared on the books overnight, that her father had insisted were fraudulent, but could not fight because he had no lawyer and no friends among the white authorities. Everything was gone, even the horses, sold at auction for a fraction of their worth. I have no money. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. No property, nothing. Then you work for me. Jonas folded his arms across his chest. 5 years, up at Black Mesa, cooking, cleaning, tanning hides, hauling water. No wages until the debt's cleared. Room and board provided. The words hit her like a fist. 5 years. 5 years of her life sold to this man, this bear of a man who smelled of the world and looked at her like she was livestock at auction. I would rather die than be your slave. Then die. His voice did not rise, did not need to. But your brother, the boy at Carlisle Indian School, he'll die too. Slower. Those schools don't feed children whose families can't pay the fees. Ashkey's what, 14? How long you think he'll last without money for food? Medicine? Winter's coming. Those dormitories get cold, real cold. Takala's vision blurred. Ashkey, her little brother, taken away 8 months ago by Indian agents who said it was for his own good, that they would educate him, civilize him, make him into a proper American. She had fought, screamed, begged. It had not mattered. They had taken him anyway, put him on a train east to Pennsylvania, to a school where they cut his hair and beat him for speaking Apache, and told him his people were savages who needed to forget they were ever Apache at all. She sent him letters. He never wrote back. She did not know if he received them or if the school threw them away. She sent what little money she could scrape together, terrified every day that it would not be enough, that they would let him starve or freeze or simply disappear into the mass graves she had heard whispers about, the ones where they buried Indian children who died of disease and despair far from home. Work for me, Jonas repeated, and I'll send $10 every month to Carlisle. For your brother, you refuse. He shrugged, and the gesture was more brutal than any threat. That's on you. She looked around the trading post, at Pike's satisfied sneer, at the cowboys and prospectors who watched with dead eyes, who would do nothing even if they wanted to because no one crossed the bear, at Tom Hutchins, who had probably taken money from Colonel Graves to stand right there and back up this lie, at the door where escape waited if she had anywhere to escape to. She looked down at the leather bag her mother had sewn, at the herbs meant to heal, now scattered on a dirty floor, at the life she had been trying to hold together with both hands, watching it slip through her fingers like water through a basket. I'll go with you. The words tasted like ash. Jonas nodded once, a sharp jerk of his chin. Good, then we seal it proper. He pulled the Bowie knife from his belt. Men flinched, but he did not move toward Takala with the blade. Instead, he reached out with his left hand, lightning quick, and grabbed one of her braids. Before she could react, the knife flashed. A length of black hair fell to the floor, cut clean. Takala gasped. The sound was small and broken, and she hated herself for making it. In Apache culture, hair was sacred. To cut a woman's hair without permission, to take that piece of her and cast it aside, was the deepest humiliation. It meant she had been shamed, defeated, made nothing. Tears came finally, not from pain, from rage and grief and the crushing weight of powerlessness. Jonas held up the braid for everyone to see, then dropped it to the floor like trash. From this moment, she's not Kai Six Killer's daughter. She's my property. A debt marker. Nothing more. The silence in the trading post had weight now. Even the men who had laughed earlier looked uncomfortable. Pike opened his mouth as if to say something, then closed it. Nobody moved. Jonas produced a length of rope from his coat, not thick, not the kind used to tie horses or pull wagons. This was thinner, softer, meant for smaller work. He grabbed Takala's wrists and began wrapping the rope around them. His hands were surprisingly gentle. The rope loose enough that she could probably slip free if she wanted, but it looked brutal, looked like he was binding a prisoner, which she supposed he was. You have a problem, Pike? Jonas did not look up from his work. Want me to add interest to that $30 you owe me for the rifle last spring? Pike's red face went redder. No problem, McHugh, no problem at all. Jonas finished with the rope and tugged Takala toward the door. She stumbled. He did not slow down, just pulled her along like livestock, while behind them the trading post erupted into conversation, men talking over each other about what they had just witnessed, about the bear taking himself a slave, about Kai Six Killer's half-breed daughter getting what was coming to her family. Outside, the morning sun hit like a hammer. The heat was instant and oppressive. Jonas's horse waited at the hitching rail, a massive Appaloosa stallion with a coat like storm clouds, dark gray dappled with white. The horse was 17 hands high if it was an inch, with hooves the size of dinner plates and an intelligent eye that watched Takala with what looked like curiosity. His name's Smoke, Jonas said, the first words he had spoken since leaving the trading post. Don't spook him, and he won't throw you. He lifted her onto the horse with one hand, setting her behind the saddle. Then he swung up himself with the easy grace of a man who had lived his whole life on horseback. The rope still bound her wrists, though when she tested it carefully, she realized she could slip free. But where would she run? Into the desert, without water or supplies? As they rode down the main street, Takala noticed an old Apache man standing in the shadow of the general store. Red Hawk. She knew him. He had fought alongside her father in the old days, before the wars ended, before the reservations became prisons. He was close to 60 now, face like carved mahogany, eyes that had seen too much. He looked at her, then at Jonas, then back at her, and he nodded. Just once. A tiny dip of his chin that could have meant anything or nothing. But it meant something. She was certain of it. The question was what? They rode out of Silver Creek heading north, toward the mountains that rose like broken teeth against the sky. The town fell away behind them, replaced by endless scrubland dotted with mesquite and creosote, with saguaro cactus standing like sentinels. The sun climbed higher. The heat pressed down. Takala's throat grew dry, but she would not ask for water, would not give him the satisfaction. 2 hours passed. The only sounds were the horse's hooves on hard earth and the wind moving through the sparse vegetation. Jonas said nothing, did not look back at her. Just rode with the patience of stone, following trails only he could see. Finally, he stopped near a small spring where water trickled between rocks and pooled in a natural basin. He dismounted and filled a canteen from the spring, then turned and held it out to Takala. Drink. She stared at the canteen, at his face, searching for mockery or cruelty. She found only his gaze, unreadable as clouds. I don't want anything from you. I need you alive, not dead from stupidity. Drink. Her throat burned. Her lips had started to crack. She took the canteen and drank, hating how good the water tasted, how her body betrayed her need. When she finished, she thrust it back at him with more force than necessary. Jonas took it without comment, capped it. Then he reached up and, with movements so casual they almost seemed accidental, loosened the rope around her wrists until it hung slack. She could slip her hands free now if she wanted, could run. As if reading her mind, Jonas said, "You thinking about running? Go ahead. Cougars out here haven't eaten in 3 days. They like the taste of people just fine." He said it the way another man might comment on the weather. Turned back to his horse, left her standing there with her wrists still technically bound but functionally free, making it very clear that her prison was not rope, but geography and circumstance. They rode on. The land began to rise. The scrub desert gave way to pinyon pine and juniper, to red rock formations that glowed like fire in the afternoon light. The temperature dropped as elevation increased. By the time the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, they had climbed into country where the air tasted different, where the silence felt deeper, where the world seemed to have forgotten that humans existed at all. Jonas stopped at the base of a massive mesa, a flat-topped mountain that rose 1,000 feet above the surrounding terrain. We camp here. Sun's dropping. He dismounted and began gathering wood for a fire with efficient movements. Takala slid down from the horse and stood awkwardly, unsure what was expected of her. Was she supposed to help? To sit quietly? To run and see if he would chase her? Jonas had the fire going in minutes, using flint and steel and dried grass for tinder. Then he pulled out a small pouch and began unpacking supplies. Jerky, hardtack, a leather bag that clinked with what sounded like dried beans. He produced a skinned rabbit from his saddlebag, already cleaned and ready for cooking. She had not even noticed him shoot it. He skewered the rabbit on a green branch and set it over the fire to roast. Within minutes, the smell of cooking meat filled the air. Takala's stomach cramped with hunger. She had not eaten since yesterday. But when Jonas cut off a piece of meat and held it out to her, she turned her head away. I won't take anything from you. Suit yourself. Tomorrow's 8 more hours riding. You'll need strength. He ate without looking at her. Did not argue, did not insist, just chewed his food slowly, staring into the fire the way men do when they are thinking about things they will not speak aloud. After he finished, he cut another piece of rabbit, seasoned it with something from a pouch at his belt, and set it on a flat rock near her. Then he rolled himself into a blanket and lay down with his back to the fire. Sleep if you can. Dawn comes early. Within minutes, his breathing deepened and steadied. He was asleep, or pretending to be. Takala sat staring at the fire, at the meat on the rock, at this impossible situation she found herself in. Enslaved to a man she did not know, bound by a debt she had not incurred, separated from the only family she had left, her stomach twisted with hunger. The smell of the meat was torture. She held out for an hour, then another. But finally, when she could stand it no longer, she reached for the piece Jonas had left for her. The moment she bit into it, she froze. The seasoning, she knew those flavors, cola buds, gathered in spring from the jumping cactus and roasted until sweet, wild onions from the high country. This was Apache cooking, the way her mother had prepared meat, the way her grandmother had taught her mother. Why would a man who enslaved Apache women know how to cook like an Apache? She ate slowly, questions multiplying in her mind, but exhaustion pulled at her like a weight. The day had been too long, too cruel. Her eyes grew heavy. She lay down on the hard ground, as far from Jonas as the firelight would allow, and fell into a sleep filled with dreams of falling. She woke to voices, quiet, careful, speaking a language she knew. Takala kept her eyes closed and her breathing steady, listened. 2 men, one was Jonas. The other spoke Apache with the accent of the Mescalero band, Red Hawk. How long will you keep this lie, Bear? Red Hawk's voice was barely above a whisper. Until Marshal Creed arrives from Santa Fe. Jonas answered in Apache, his accent rough but understandable. 2 weeks, maybe 3. And if Graves sends his men before then I'll do what I've always done. I'll kill them. A pause. Wind in the pinyon trees, the fire crackling. The girl doesn't know the truth. She suffers. Jonas's voice dropped even lower. Takala had to strain to hear it. Better she suffers for a few weeks than dies in a ditch with a bullet in her brain. Graves wants her dead. As long as she's just property, just a debt slave, she's not worth the trouble. But if he thinks she means something to me, if he thinks she knows what her father knew, the sentence died unfinished. Kai would be proud and ashamed. Kai would understand. He always did. Footsteps, the sound of someone leaving. Then silence except for the fire and Jonas's breathing, which had returned to the steady rhythm of sleep, or pretended sleep. Takala lay perfectly still, her mind racing. Marshall, Graves, her father knowing something, Jonas speaking Apache, Red Hawk calling him Bear like it was a term of respect, not fear. Nothing made sense. Everything made sense. She did not sleep again that night. Dawn came cold and gray. Jonas woke and stretched, his joints popping like dry branches. He looked at Takala, and something in his expression shifted when he saw she was awake. Had probably been awake for hours, but he said nothing, just scattered the remains of the fire and saddled Smoke with practiced efficiency. They rode higher into the mountains. The air thinned. Pine replaced juniper. The trail, if it could be called that, wound between massive boulders and along cliff edges where one misstep would send horse and rider tumbling into space. Jonas guided Smoke with light touches, the big stallion picking his way across terrain that would have broken a lesser horse. By midday, they crested a ridge and Takala saw their destination. Black Mesa rose before them, a fortress of stone with sheer walls on three sides in a single approach through a narrow canyon. At the base of the mesa, sheltered by overhanging rock and surrounded by tall pines, sat a cabin. It was solidly built from logs a foot thick, with a stone chimney and real glass windows, protected by wooden shutters that could be barred from inside. Around the cabin, she saw the evidence of Jonas's trade. Stretched hides drying on frames, steel traps hanging from pegs, a woodshed stacked with split logs, a smokehouse for preserving meat. This was not the camp of a man who lived rough. This was a homestead, established and maintained with care. Jonas rode up to the cabin and dismounted. He tied Smoke to a hitching post and turned to help Takala down. His hands on her wrist were impersonal, neither rough nor gentle, treating her exactly like the property he had claimed she was. Inside, he walked to the door, which was not locked, and pushed it open. "I'll show you where you'll work." The interior was a single large room. The stone fireplace dominated one wall, big enough to stand in, with iron hooks for hanging pots and a Dutch oven sitting in the coals. Against another wall stood a bed frame made from pine poles, covered with bear and elk hides. No mattress, just furs. Primitive but functional. A gun rack held 3 rifles and 2 shotguns, all oiled and maintained. A workbench near the window was covered with tools for tanning leather. Stretching frames, scrapers, awls, needles made from bone. But what caught Takala's attention was something else. In the corner, wrapped in clean cloth, was a bundle. Jonas saw her looking and crossed to it. He unwrapped the cloth to reveal clothing. A woman's dress made from soft doe skin, decorated with mescalero beadwork in patterns Takala recognized. Beside it, a wool blanket, clean sheets, a hairbrush with a handle carved from antler. "That's yours." Jonas's voice was flat. "The corner by the fireplace. There's a straw mattress under those furs. Change into the dress if you want. Or keep wearing what you have. Makes no difference to me." Takala stared at the clothing. It was new, made recently, made for someone her size. "Why do you have this?" "Because you're going to be here a while. Can't have you working in rags." It was a reasonable answer. It made perfect sense. And yet something about it felt wrong. The care in the beadwork, the quality of the leather, the way the patterns matched her mother's style exactly. This was not clothing bought from a trader. This had been made by Apache hands, by someone who knew her, who knew what would fit her. Where did this come from? "Does it matter?" Jonas turned away, pulling a piece of paper from his pocket. He unfolded it and held it out. "These are your duties. You wake at dawn, haul water from the creek. It's a mile down, 2 miles round trip. 2 buckets, 3 gallons each, twice a day. Cook breakfast and dinner. I eat at 6 morning and 6 evening. Tan, whatever hides I bring back. 3 to 4 deer a week usually. Chop firewood, mend equipment, keep the cabin clean." He pointed to the corner he had indicated earlier. "That's your space. You sleep there. Don't touch my things. Don't go through my belongings. Do your work. Stay out of my way. Follow those rules and we'll have no problems." "And if I refuse?" Jonas turned to look at her with those winter blue eyes. "Then your brother stops getting money. I'll write to Carlisle. Tell them you died. They'll put him in a pauper's grave inside a month when the fees go unpaid." The casual cruelty of it took her breath away. Not because she believed he would do it, but because she could not be certain he would not. "I'll do your work." The words came out sharp as broken glass. "But know this, I will never forgive you." "I don't need your forgiveness." He walked to the door. "Just your obedience." He left, closing the door behind him. Takala stood in the center of the cabin, surrounded by the tools of her new prison, and tried very hard not to scream. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of labor and exhaustion. Jonas was true to his word. She woke before dawn and hauled water until her shoulders burned and her hands blistered. The buckets were heavy, the trail steep, and by the second trip, each day her legs shook with fatigue. She cooked meals over the fireplace, using the cast iron pots and limited supplies Jonas provided. Beans, cornmeal, dried meat, salt pork, nothing fancy, nothing wasted. And she tanned hides, which was the worst of all the tasks. Jonas brought her a deerskin the third day, still bloody, reeking of animal and death. He threw it down on the workbench along with a curved scraping knife. Clean it, tan it, I'll check your work tonight. He did not tell her how, did not show her the process. Just left her standing there with a task she had never done and a blade she did not know how to use. She tried, scraped at the membrane and clinging to the underside of the hide, scraped too hard and punched a hole straight through the leather, ruined it. When Jonas returned that evening and saw the damaged hide, his face went hard as stone. He picked it up, looked at the hole, then walked to the fireplace and threw the entire skin into the flames. She watched her hours of work burn, watched $8 of value turn to smoke and ash. That's added to your debt. 2 weeks. His voice was cold, distant. Now cook dinner, and this time try not to burn it. She wanted to scream at him, to throw something, to rage against the unfairness of being punished for failing at a task she had never been taught. But she held it inside, cooked the beans and cornbread with hands that shook from exhaustion and anger. The meal was adequate, barely. Jonas ate without comment and left her to clean up. That night, lying on her straw mattress in the corner, Takala heard him moving around the cabin, heard him muttering to himself in a voice too low to understand the words. Then she heard something that made her breath catch. A single sentence spoken to the empty air. "Forgive me, old friend. This is the only way I know to keep her breathing." Old friend, the same phrase he had used with Red Hawk that first night. Was he talking to her father? To the ghost of Kai's six killer? Or to his own conscience? She lay awake long after Jonas's breathing deepened into sleep, trying to piece together the puzzle. A white mountain man who spoke Apache, who knew her mother's cooking, who bought or commissioned clothing in her exact size before ever meeting her, who treated her with calculated cruelty in public, but left rope loose enough to escape in food seasoned with kindness, who spoke of keeping her breathing as if that were his purpose, not her labor or her debt. Nothing fit together, unless the cruelty was the lie, unless the debt was invented, unless everything she had witnessed in Silver Creek had been a performance meant for other eyes. But whose and why? The answer came 5 days after her arrival, announced by the sound of horses approaching the cabin. Multiple horses, military horses, from the jangle of tack and the disciplined pace of their movement. Jonas heard them first. She saw his whole body go rigid, saw him cross to the window in 3 long strides and peer out through a gap in the shutters. Then he turned to her, and for the first time since Silver Creek, she saw something other than stone in his face. She saw fear. "Root cellar. Now, don't make a sound. Don't come out until I tell you." His voice was hard, urgent, completely different from the cold dismissal she had grown used to. "Who is it?" "Now." He grabbed her arm, not gently, and pulled up a trap door hidden beneath a bearskin rug. Underneath was a narrow space, maybe 6 feet long and 4 feet deep, lined with shelves holding preserves and smoked meat. A hiding place. A bolt hole. Jonas practically shoved her down into it, then lowered the trap door over her head. The bearskin fell back into place, plunging her into darkness, broken only by thin lines of light between the floorboards. She heard him walk away, heard the cabin door open, heard voices. "Jonas McHugh. Been a long time, old scout." The voice was smooth, cultured, the kind of voice that belonged to a man comfortable with authority. Through the gaps in the floorboards, Takala could see boots, 6 pairs of cavalry boots in good repair, and 1 pair of officer's boots, polished to a mirror shine. "Colonel Graves?" Jonas's voice was flat. "What do you want?" "Heard you took in Kai's 6 killer's daughter. Wanted to make sure you're treating her proper. Can't have accusations of mistreatment. Bad for the Army's reputation." Colonel Graves, the name on the promissory note, the witness to her father's signature. An army officer concerned about her welfare. It should have made her feel safer. Should have. Instead, every instinct she had screamed danger. Through the thin gaps between the floorboards, Takala watched the polished boots move across the cabin. They moved with the confidence of a man who had never been told no, who had never needed to be told no, the kind of confidence that came from power, from rank, from knowing that the law and the guns that enforced it answered to you. She's paying off her daddy's debt, Jonas said. His voice carried that same flat quality it always did, but Takala had begun to notice the small variations now. The slight tightness when he was controlling anger. The barely perceptible softening when he thought no one was listening. Right now, his voice was tight as a drawn bowstring. All legal and proper. Legal don't always mean right, Jonas. The boots stopped moving, turned. Where is she? I'd like to see for myself that you're keeping your word. Silence stretched. Takala held her breath in the darkness of the root cellar, pressed against jars of preserves that smelled like summer fruit gone to vinegar. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard she was certain they could hear it above. She's at the creek, Jonas said, hauling water. Be back in an hour or so. An hour? The smooth voice developed an edge. That's convenient. Nothing convenient about it. It's a 2-mile round trip. Takes what it takes. More silence. Takala could feel the tension through the floorboards, could almost see the two men measuring each other, deciding what truth looked like and whether they believed it. I'll wait then. The boots moved toward the door. My men and I could use water ourselves. Perhaps I'll ride down to the creek, make sure your property hasn't decided to run. She won't run. Jonas's voice went even flatter, which Takala now recognized as a warning sign. Got nowhere to run to. Her brother's at Carlisle. She knows I'm the only thing keeping him fed. Ah, yes, young Ashki, 14 years old now. Such an impressionable age. Something in Graves's tone made Takala's skin crawl. Those schools are so far from home. Accidents happen. Disease. Despair. So many Indian children don't survive their education. The threat hung in the air like smoke from a gun barrel. Jonas stepped forward. Takala could see his boots now, directly above her hiding place. You threatening her brother, Colonel? Threatening? The smooth voice sounded genuinely surprised. I'm simply stating facts. The mortality rate at Indian schools is quite high, 20% by some estimates, 30 at others. It would be a shame if young Ashki became a statistic. He won't. Jonas's voice could have cut stone. Not while I'm keeping his sister useful and quiet. That was our arrangement. Our arrangement. The words fell into the darkness like stones down a well. Takala's mind raced. What arrangement? Between Jonas and this Colonel Graves? Was Jonas working with him? Was this all a trap, some elaborate scheme she did not understand? Indeed it was. The boots turned again, moving back toward the door. Keep her close, Jonas. There's been Apache unrest near the reservation. Renegades, you know how these things go. Raids, retaliation, white settlers getting nervous. Wouldn't want Miss Six Killer caught in any crossfire. She won't leave this mountain. See that she doesn't. A pause. And Jonas? That evidence Kai was gathering before he died. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? The question landed like a knife in the dark. Takala felt her breath stop. Kai and I weren't close. Jonas's voice gave away nothing. Haven't talked to him in years. If he was digging into something that got him killed, that's between him and whoever put arsenic in his medicine. Arsenic. The word confirmed what Takala had suspected but not wanted to believe. Her father had not died of lung fever. He had been murdered, poisoned slowly over the course of weeks while she watched helplessly, while the fort surgeon gave him medicine that was supposed to help but instead killed him by degrees. A tragedy. Graves' voice held no sympathy at all. Kai should have minded his own business, traded his goods, raised his children. Instead, he asked questions, poked into matters that didn't concern him. And now his daughter is hauling water for a mountain hermit, and his son is in a school he'll likely never leave. Cautionary tale, really. Message received, Colonel. I thought you might see it that way. You always were pragmatic, Jonas. That's what I liked about you back in the old days, before you went soft. The boots moved to the door, stopped. Oh, and Jonas, if you're thinking about doing something noble, something stupid like protecting Kai's daughter because you feel you owe him something, remember what happened the last time you tried to be a hero? Camp Grant. Ring any bells? Jonas said nothing, but Takala saw his hands curl into fists at his sides, saw his whole body go rigid. That's what I thought. Graves opened the door. Give Miss Six Killer my regards. Tell her I'll be checking on her welfare regularly, very regularly. The boots left. Horse hooves outside, multiple animals moving away. The sound faded gradually until only silence remained. Jonas stood motionless for a long time. 5 minutes. 10. Finally, he crossed to the trap door and lifted it. Light flooded in. Takala blinked against the sudden brightness, saw Jonas looking down at her with an expression she could not read. You heard. It was not a question. She nodded. Jonas reached down and hauled her up out of the cellar with one hand, set her on her feet. Then he walked to the wall and slammed his fist into it with such force that his knuckles punched straight through the wooden planks. Blood welled up immediately. He pulled his hand back, leaving a ragged hole in the wall, and stood there breathing hard, staring at his bleeding knuckles like he had never seen them before. That man killed my father. Takala's voice was steady despite the fear racing through her veins. Colonel Graves, he poisoned him. Jonas said nothing. And you have some arrangement with him. You just told him you were keeping me useful and quiet. What does that mean? What is this really about? Jonas turned to face her. His winter blue eyes were no longer cold. They were blazing with something hot and terrible and carefully controlled. It means, he said slowly, that you're going to sit down, and you're going to listen, and you're not going to interrupt until I'm finished. He walked to a chest in the corner, pulled out a leather saddlebag, opened it and removed a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. He set the bundle on the table between them and unwrapped it carefully. Inside were letters, dozens of them. Old paper yellowed with age, ink faded but still legible. Jonas spread them out like a card player, showing his hand. Your father and I served together in the Apache Wars, he began. His voice was different now, tired, heavy with weight carried too long. We weren't just soldiers, we were scouts. We knew the land, knew the Apache. Your father was half Apache himself, worked as a translator. I was a tracker. We spent 3 years riding together, fighting together, bleeding together. He picked up one of the letters. Read from it. July 1879, Fort Apache. Dear Jonas, Nolan gave birth to our daughter today. We named her Takala. She has her mother's eyes and my stubbornness. You would like her. Takala felt her throat tighten. Her father's handwriting, her name. We saw things in that war. Jonas set down the letter, picked up another. Bad things, massacres disguised as battles, villages burned with women and children inside, officers who cared more about body counts than justice. Your father and I, we tried to stop it when we could, warned villages before raids, led soldiers in the wrong direction, got punished for incompetence when we were really committing treason. He looked at Tukale. Camp Grant, 1871. Before your father and I even met, but we both heard about it. Soldiers and civilians attacked a peaceful Apache camp at dawn, killed 144 people, mostly women and children. 8 were taken as slaves, the rest were butchered and mutilated. I know the story. Every Apache knew it. It was burned into their collective memory like a brand. What you don't know is that 15 years later, men involved in organizing that massacre are still in power, still working in Arizona territory, still seeing Apache as obstacles to be removed. Jonas pulled out another letter. This one was newer, dated just 3 months ago. This is the last letter your father sent me, 3 weeks before he died. Read it. Takala took the letter with shaking hands. Her father's writing, but messier than usual, as if written in haste or under stress. Brother Jonas, I am on to something bigger than I thought. Colonel Graves is not just corrupt. He is operating a criminal network that spans the territory. He is stealing Army rifles and selling them to renegade Apache and Mexican bandits. More than 300 Winchester repeaters in 18 months. $50 per rifle. The raids that follow justify increased military presence, which leads to more land seizures from reservations, which Graves buys through dummy companies for pennies and sells to the railroad for hundreds of dollars per acre. I have proof. Ledgers, letters, witness testimony from soldiers he has blackmailed. I am copying everything and will bring it to you next week. If anything happens to me, take these documents to U.S. Marshal Isaiah Creed in Santa Fe. He is honest. He will act. And Jonas, if I die, protect my children. Make them think Takala is worthless to you. Make them believe she knows nothing, means nothing. Graves kills threats, not pawns. Keep her alive. That is all I ask. Your sister and nephew at Mescalero will help you. Red Hawk knows the plan. Your brother in everything but blood. Kai Takala read the letter twice. 3 times. The words did not change. Her father had known he was going to die, had planned for it, had asked this mountain man to protect her by pretending to enslave her. He came here the week before he got sick. Jonas took the letter back, refolded it with care. Brought me an iron box full of evidence. Account ledgers showing $178,000 in stolen profits. Letters between Graves and land speculators. Telegrams about weapon shipments. Names of soldiers willing to testify. Everything needed to bring down not just Graves, but a network of corrupt officers and politicians stretching to Washington. Then why haven't you? Why haven't you given this to the marshal? Because I tried. Jonas's jaw clenched. Sent word to Creed in Santa Fe 2 months ago. He was supposed to arrive 3 weeks back. Then I heard Graves intercepted the telegram. Sent men to ambush Creed's party outside Santa Fe. Killed 3 of his deputies. Creed survived, but he's been pinned down. Can't get here safely. So we're just waiting? Hiding? We're staying alive. Yeah, Jonas pointed at her. Graves knows your father had evidence. He knows Kai was working with someone sharing information. If he figures out that someone was me, if he realizes you're not just property, but the daughter of a man I considered my brother, he'll kill us both. Publicly. Make it look like an Apache raid or a robbery gone wrong. Takala sat down heavily on a stool. Her mind was reeling, trying to process everything. The debt, the promissory note. I forged it. Red Hawk witnessed Kai's signature in front of me 6 months ago on a different document, something legal and legitimate. I traced that signature onto the promissory note and added Graves' name as witness. Graves doesn't know he supposedly witnessed it, but if anyone checks, they'll find his signature on dozens of documents from Fort Apache, won't be able to prove he didn't witness this one. The scene in the trading post, you cutting my hair. Had to make it convincing. Had to make everyone believe you were nothing to me. Less than nothing. Property. Graves has spies everywhere. Tom Hutchins. Pike. Half the drifters in Silver Creek. If any of them reported that Jonas McHugh treated Kai's daughter with kindness or respect, Graves would know something was wrong. Takala touched the place where her braid had been cut. The humiliation had been real. The tears had been real, but the reason behind it had been survival, not cruelty. The clothes, she said, the Apache dress, the beadwork. Red Hawk's wife made it. She knew your size from seeing you at the reservation. I asked her to make something your mother would have approved of. The cooking, Apache style. Your father taught me, said if I was going to protect his daughter, I should at least feed her properly. For the first time, something like a smile ghosted across Jonas's face. He was very particular about the seasoning on rabbit. Takala felt tears building behind her eyes. Not from sadness, from the overwhelming weight of understanding. Everything she had hated Jonas for had been designed to save her life. Every cruelty had been calculated kindness. I called you a monster, she whispered. You were supposed to. Jonas's voice was gentle now, gentler than she had ever heard it. Monsters are easier to hate than men doing what they think is right. She stood up, walked to him, raised her hand and pressed it against his bleeding knuckles where he had struck the wall. We should clean this, bandage it. I've had worse. I'm sure you have, but my father asked you to keep me alive. He didn't say anything about letting you die from infection because you're too stubborn to accept help. Jonas looked at her hand on his, at her face. Something shifted in his expression. Something that looked like relief or recognition, or perhaps just the simple human need to not carry a burden alone anymore. There's yarrow in the bag by the fireplace, he said. And honey, Apache medicine. I know, my mother taught me. She cleaned his hand with water heated over the fire, applied a paste of yarrow and honey to prevent infection, bound it with clean cloth. Her hands moved with the practiced ease of someone who had done this many times, who had learned healing from women who had practiced it for generations. Jonas watched her work in silence. When she finished, he flexed his hand carefully. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We're not out of this. Takala sat back on her heels. What's the plan? Keep hiding until Marshal Creed arrives? If he ever arrives? He'll arrive. Creed is stubborn, and he's not alone. He's been building a case against Graves for months. The evidence your father gathered is just the final piece. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3. And if Graves comes back before then? Jonas stood and walked to the gun rack, pulled down the Winchester 1873, checked the action, set it on the table. Then the sharps. Then the shotgun. One by one, he laid out his arsenal like a general preparing for siege. Then I do what I've always done, he said quietly. I fight. Over the next 3 days, Jonas taught Takala how to fight with him. He woke her at 4 in the morning that first day, while stars still burned cold in the darkness above Black Mesa. She stumbled outside to find him waiting with the Winchester in his hands. You said your father taught you to shoot. He did. Rifles. When I was 12. Show me. He handed her the Winchester. It was heavier than the old Springfield her father had used, the metal cold enough to burn her hands in the pre-dawn chill. But the weight felt right, felt like coming home to something she had forgotten she knew. Jonas set up targets at 50 yards. Tin cans balanced on rocks. Hit 3 out of 5. She aimed. Breathed out slowly the way her father had taught her, squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. One can spun away into the darkness. She worked the lever action, chambered another round. Fired again. Another hit. By the 5th shot, she had knocked down 4 cans. Not bad, Jonas's voice held something that might have been approval. But not good enough. In a real fight, you don't get 5 chances, you get 1, maybe 2, and the targets shoot back. He spent the next 3 hours teaching her speed, quick target acquisition, firing from different positions, standing, kneeling, prone, moving targets, rocks he threw into the air that she had to track and hit before they fell. By the time the sun rose properly, her shoulder was bruised from the rifle's kick, her arms shaking from fatigue, and she had hit 8 out of 10 moving targets. Better. Jonas took the rifle from her, ejected the remaining rounds. Tomorrow we work on pistol. Day 2 was the Colt revolver. Heavier than it looked, the weight all in the barrel and cylinder. 6 shots. Single action, which meant she had to cock the hammer manually before each trigger pull. Draw from the holster, Jonas instructed, strapping a gun belt around her waist. The leather was old and supple, worn smooth by years of use. Don't grab for it, don't slap at it. Smooth motion, hand to grip, grip to target, finger to trigger. One continuous movement. She practiced the draw 100 times without ammunition. 200, until her hand knew the path without thought, until she could close her eyes and still find the grip perfectly, still bring the barrel up and on target. Then Jonas set up bottles at 20 paces. You've got 6 seconds to draw and fire 6 shots. Ready? She was not ready, but she nodded anyway. Go. Her hand moved. The Colt cleared leather. The hammer came back under her thumb. She fired. The first bottle exploded. She cocked and fired again. And again. 6 shots in 8 seconds. 4 bottles destroyed. 7 seconds next time, Jonas said. 6 the time after that. By the end of the second day, she could draw and fire 6 shots in 5 seconds. Hit 4 targets reliably. Reload in under 30. Her hands were blistered. Her trigger finger was numb. She had never felt more capable in her life. Day 3 was knife work. Jonas handed her an Arkansas toothpick, 8 inches of carbon steel with a leather-wrapped handle. Apache fighters are the best knife fighters in the world. Your people have been doing this for 1,000 years. White men, we use knives like swords, all slashing and stabbing from a distance. Apache use knives like an extension of their bodies. Close in, fast, targeting vital points. He demonstrated, low stance, blade held in reverse grip, edge facing out, movement that flowed like water, like dance, showing her where the vulnerabilities were on a human body. Throat, armpit where the brachial artery ran close to the surface. Kidneys, the great femoral artery in the inner thigh. You're smaller, lighter than most men you'll fight, he said. Use that, get inside their reach. Use their size against them. And if someone grabs you, if they get their hands on you, you need to know how to break free. He taught her escapes, how to break a wrist grab using leverage and momentum, how to counter a chokehold, how to fight from the ground if she got knocked down. It was a brutal education. He did not go easy on her. Grabbed her hard enough to bruise, forced her to actually get her way free, corrected her technique by making her fail until she learned. During one drill, she moved too slow and Jonas caught her wrist. She tried the escape he had shown her, but executed it wrong. His grip tightened. She panicked for a second, then remembered the knife in her other hand, brought it up fast, stopped the point a hair's breadth from his ribs. Jonas looked down at the blade, up at her face, slowly released her wrist. Good, he said. That's good. That evening, as they sat by the fire eating beans and cornbread, Takala broke the silence. Why did you really do this? Help my father, help me. You could have just left, gone deeper into the mountains. Stayed out of it. Jonas stared into the fire for a long time before answering. Your father saved my life 3 times, once from a Comanche raiding party in the Red River country. Once from a blizzard that would have frozen me solid. Once from myself, when I tried to drink my way into the grave after my wife and daughter died. You had a family. A long time ago, Sarah and Lily. Lily was 8, died of diphtheria while I was off playing soldier, pretending I was protecting people when I couldn't even protect my own child. His voice was flat, but Takala could hear the wound beneath it, old but never healed. After they died, I came out here. Figured I'd drink until my liver quit or a bear ate me, whichever came first. My father stopped you. Rode up here uninvited. Took my whiskey, sat with me for 3 days without saying much of anything. On the 4th day, he said your wife and daughter would not want you to die this way. On the 5th day, he left. Came back every few months after that. Always brought news. Always treated me like I was still human. After a while, I started to believe I might be. Takala thought about her father, about the man she had known, patient and kind and impossibly stubborn when he believed in something. He was good at seeing people, really seeing them. He saw you. Jonas looked at her across the fire. Wrote about you in every letter. How smart you were. How brave, how you took care of Ashkey after your mother died. How you learned healing from the old women on the reservation, even though some of them treated you badly for your mixed blood. He was proud of you. The words hit her harder than she expected. Tears came finally, not from grief, but from the simple human need to know she had been loved, had been valued. He would have liked this, I think, she said after a while. You teaching me to fight, to protect myself. He would have preferred you never needed protecting in the first place. They fell silent again. The fire crackled. Outside, night birds called. The wind moved through the pines with a sound like distant ocean. It was Takala who heard the horses first. Her head snapped up. Jonas was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand, moving to the window. He peered out through a gap in the shutters, and Takala saw his whole body go tense. How many? She whispered. 4, coming up the canyon. Moving careful. Scouting. He crossed to the gun rack, started loading weapons with economical movements. Get your rifle and the pistol. Bar the door shore after I leave. You're going out there? Someone needs to talk to them. Find out what they want. If they're gravesmen, I can maybe convince them you're not here, that I sent you down to Silver Creek on an errand. He checked the sharps, loaded 5 rounds, grabbed extra ammunition. If shooting starts, don't hesitate. Anyone comes through that door who isn't me, you shoot them. Understand? She nodded, mouth dry. Jonas paused at the door. Your father asked me to keep you alive. I don't break my promises. Then he was gone into the darkness, moving with a silence that seemed impossible for a man his size. Takala barred the door, then took position at the window where she could see the approach to the cabin. The Winchester felt solid in her hands. Real. She had 60 rounds of ammunition. The Colt held 6 with 18 more in her belt. If it came to shooting, she would not go down easy. Minutes passed like hours. She saw shadows moving in the trees, heard low voices. Then Jonas's voice, loud and clear. "That's far enough. State your business." A pause. Then a different voice, younger, with an accent that placed him somewhere east. "We're looking for the half-breed girl, Tequila Six Killer. Colonel Graves wants to ask her some questions." "She's not here. We saw smoke from your chimney." "I live here. I make smoke. Girl's down in Silver Creek. Sent her to buy supplies 2 days ago. Won't be back for a week." "Colonel said she'd be here." "Colonel's wrong. Now get off my land." Silence. Takala's finger rested on the trigger guard, ready to move to the trigger itself. Her heart hammered, but her hands were steady. Jonas had taught her well. "We're going to need to search the cabin." The Eastern voice again. "Just to be sure, You're not searching anything. This is my property. You got no warrant, no authority. You want to come back with a federal marshal and a proper court order? We can talk then. Colonel Graves is our authority." "Graves is a colonel, not a judge. Doesn't give him the right to search a man's home without cause." The tension stretched thin as wire. Takala could feel it about to snap. Her finger moved to the trigger. If they rushed the cabin, she would fire. Would kill if she had to. 3 days ago, that thought would have terrified her. Now it was simply calculation. Survival. Then a new voice joined the conversation. Speaking Apache. Red Hawk. "The bear speaks truth. The woman is not here. I watched her leave on the South Trail 3 days past." "Who the hell are you?" "I am Mescalero. I scout these hills. I see all who come and go." The woman left. "You waste time." "An Apache? And we're supposed to believe you?" "Believe what you wish." Red Hawk's voice was Weishirmunt, amused almost. "Search if you must. Break into the bearer's home without cause. See what happens. I will watch. It should be entertaining." More silence. Takala imagined the soldiers, 4 of them against Jonas and Red Hawk, doing the math. Deciding if it was worth it. Deciding if their lives were worth Graves' orders. Finally, the Eastern voice again. "We'll be back, with a proper warrant. Tell your Apache friend he'd best not get in our way next time." Hoofbeats, moving away, fading into distance and darkness. Jonas did not come back to the cabin immediately. An hour passed, 2. Takala kept watch at the window, rifle ready, jumping at every sound. Finally, she heard a soft knock at the door, Jonas's voice. "It's me, let me in." She unbarred the door. Jonas slipped inside, followed by Red Hawk. The old Apache warrior looked just as she remembered him from the reservation. Weathered face, eyes that had seen too much, bearing that combined dignity and weariness in equal measure. "They will return," Red Hawk said without preamble. "Tonight was scouting. Tomorrow or the next day, they come with more men. Graves knows something. He is moving faster than we anticipated." "How many men can he muster?" Jonas asked. "At the fort? 50 soldiers. But he will not bring all. Cannot explain it to his superiors. He will bring a squad. 10 to 15 men, maybe hired guns from Silver Creek. 20 total, perhaps 25. Against 3 of us. 5. Red Hawk held up a hand. "Nailnish and Dakota will come. They owe your debt for their families. Will not let you fight alone." "Still outnumbered 5 to 1. "Yes, but we choose the ground, and we have her." Red Hawk nodded toward Takala. 3 days ago she was prey. Now she is hunter. I saw the targets you set. She hits 4 from 5. That is warrior skill. Takala felt a flush of pride at the old warrior's words, coming from Red Hawk, who had fought in battles she could barely imagine, who had survived wars that had killed thousands. The praise meant something. "We cannot hold the cabin against that many," Jonas said. He was thinking out loud now, pacing, strategy working itself through his mind. "Too many approaches, not enough cover. Then we do not stay here." Red Hawk pulled out a scrap of cloth, laid it on the table, used charcoal to sketch a rough map. "There. Eagle's Nest Canyon, 8 miles north. Narrow entrance, high walls, one way in. A handful can hold it against many." "For how long?" "Long enough. Marshal Creed sent word. He comes in 4 days with 30 deputies. Federal authority. Graves cannot touch him. 4 days, Jonas studied the map. We'd have to leave tonight, move everything we need. Better to travel light, take weapons, ammunition, water. Leave the rest. Material possessions can be replaced. Jonas looked at Takala. You get a say in this. It's your life we're risking. She thought of her father, of the evidence hidden in that iron box, evidence that could bring down not just Graves, but an entire network of corruption. Of her brother, Ashkey, held hostage in a school hundreds of miles away, his life dependent on her survival. We run, she said. We survive. And when Marshal Creed arrives, we make sure every man involved in my father's murder pays for what they've done. Red Hawk smiled, showing teeth worn but still strong. Your father's daughter, Kai would be proud. They spent the rest of the night preparing. Jonas packed weapons and ammunition into saddlebags with the efficiency of long practice. The Sharps and 200 rounds. The Winchester and 300 rounds. Both pistols, multiple cylinders already loaded. The shotgun with 50 shells. The knife, extra powder, extra caps. If they were going to make a stand, they would not run out of firepower. Takala packed food, jerky, hardtack, dried beans, salt pork. Not much. Red Hawk was right about traveling light, but enough to sustain them for a week if necessary. She filled canteens and leather water bags, knowing that water would be more precious than bullets in a siege. Red Hawk disappeared into the night and returned an hour later, leading 2 horses. For speed, we ride hard. We can reach Eagle's Nest before dawn. Be in position before Graves realizes we have moved. They left Black Mesa as the moon reached its apex. Jonas took one last look at the cabin, at the home he had built over 12 years of solitude, then swung into Smoke's saddle without hesitation or regret. Some things were worth more than property, worth more than safety, worth more than life itself if it came to it. They rode north through country so rough that the horses picked their way by moonlight, an instinct more than visible trail. Up through pine forests so thick the darkness underneath them was absolute. Across meadows where frost glittered like scattered diamonds. Down through draws and up over ridges that seemed to go on forever. Takala had never been this deep into the high country, had never imagined land could be so wild, so indifferent to human presence. Twice they heard sounds that might have been pursuit. Distant hoofbeats, the jangle of equipment. Each time Red Hawk signaled them to stop, to wait in frozen silence while he scouted ahead or behind. Each time he returned with the same report. False alarm, elk moving through timber, a bear foraging, their own nerves playing tricks. But they could not afford to assume, not with Graves hunting them. Dawn found them climbing the final approach to Eagle's Nest Canyon. Takala saw why Red Hawk had chosen it. The canyon walls rose 500 feet on either side, sheer stone that would require ropes and hours to scale. The entrance was a slot barely wide enough for 2 horses to pass side by side, opening into a larger basin maybe an acre across with a spring-fed pool at the back. A fortress carved by time and water from living rock. Naelnish and Takota were already there. 2 Apache warriors she recognized from the reservation, both in their 30s, both carrying the kind of calm readiness that came from men who had fought and survived. They had brought supplies, more ammunition, food, blankets, and something else. We brought your brother's things, Naelnish said to Takala. From your father's house before it was seized. Thought you might want them. He handed her a small cloth bundle. Inside was a carved wooden horse Ashkey had made when he was 7. A drawing he had done of their mother, the lines child simple but capturing something essential about her smile. A letter addressed to Takala in Ashkey's careful handwriting, never sent because he had been taken to Carlisle before he could mail it. She clutched the bundle to her chest, feeling the weight of it, the terrible preciousness of these small things that were all she had left of the family she had lost. Thank you, she managed. Your father was good to our families, Takota said. When the agents came to take our children to the schools, he hid them, gave them time to escape to Mexico. Some made it. That is more than most did for us. He never told me. He would not. That was his way. Do good and speak nothing of it. They settled into defensive positions. Jonas took the high ground at the canyon entrance with the Sharps, where he could cover the approach from 500 yards out. Red Hawk and Naalnish positioned themselves on the canyon walls, hidden among the rocks with rifles and good sight lines. Dakota stayed in the basin with Takala, teaching her the layout, showing her fallback positions, making sure she knew every rock and crevice that could provide cover if the shooting started. "You have killed before?" Dakota asked her. "No. You will. Today or tomorrow. When you do, remember this. You are not taking a life. You are preserving lives. Yours, ours, your brother's. The difference matters." She nodded, not trusting her voice. The first day passed without incident. Then the second. They took turns on watch, sleeping in shifts, eating cold food because smoke from a fire would give away their position. Waiting. The tension was worse than action. Gave too much time to think. To imagine what would happen if Graves came with too many men, if Marshal Creed was delayed, if everything Jonas and her father had planned fell apart. On the third day, just after dawn, Jonas gave a low whistle from his position. The signal. Riders approaching. Takala grabbed her rifle, checked that the Colt was secure in its holster, and moved to her assigned position behind a boulder that gave her cover and a clear field of fire toward the canyon entrance. Her heart hammered, but her breathing stayed steady. 3 days of training, 3 days of preparation. It had to be enough. Through the narrow slot of the canyon entrance, she saw them. 10 riders in army blue. 5 more in civilian clothes, hired guns from their look, hard men with tied-down holsters and eyes that had seen too much death to care about adding more. 15 total. At the head of the column rode Colonel Nathaniel Wade Graves. He was exactly as she had imagined from hearing his voice. Tall, straight-backed, with a carefully trimmed beard and eyes that were intelligent and cold and completely without compassion. He wore his uniform like armor, every button polished, every crease perfect. The kind of man who believed his own righteousness so completely that any action taken in service of his goals was automatically justified. The column stopped just outside the canyon entrance, out of easy rifle range, but close enough that Takala could see their faces. Graves raised his hand. The riders halted. "Jonas McHugh," his voice carried clear in the morning air. "I know you're in there. I know the girl's with you. This doesn't have to end in blood. Send her out. That's all I want. Send out Kai Six Killer's daughter and you can ride away. You have my word as an officer." Jonas's voice came from the rocks above. "Your word's worth shit, Graves. Same as your honor. Is that really how you want to play this? You're outnumbered, outgunned. I've got 15 men. You've got what? Maybe 4, 5. The math's not in your favor, old scout. Math's never been my strong point, but I'm real good with this sharps. You want to test how good? Keep talking." Graves smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "You always were stubborn. That's what got you court-martialed, remember? Couldn't follow orders. Couldn't accept that sometimes hard decisions have to be made for the greater good." "The greater good," Jonas's laugh was bitter. "That what you call selling guns to renegades? Murdering civilians? Stealing land? Greater good for your wallet, maybe. Civilization requires sacrifice. The Apache had their time. Now it's our turn. Progress demands it. The railroad demands it. This territory will be a state within 10 years, and there's no room for savages living on prime land. I'm simply facilitating the inevitable. By killing anyone who gets in your way. By removing obstacles. Kai Six Killer was an obstacle, a half-breed trader who couldn't mind his own business, who had to go digging into things that didn't concern him. And now his daughter is an obstacle too, because she knows too much, because she's seen too much, because letting her live is a risk I can't afford." From her hiding place, Takala felt ice water run down her spine. There it was, the admission. The truth spoken plainly because Graves believed he had already won, that they were dead already and simply didn't know it yet. "So that's your offer?" Jonas called down. "Give you Takala so you can kill her quietly and you let the rest of us go?" "Precisely. I'm a reasonable man, Jonas. I don't want unnecessary bloodshed. But I will have that girl, one way or another." "Then I guess it's the other way, because she's not going anywhere except to testify against you in federal court." Graves's expression hardened. "So be it. You had your chance." He turned in his saddle, gestured to his men. "Take the canyon, kill everyone inside, no prisoners." The shooting started immediately. The first bullet came from one of the hired guns, a man with a scar running from temple to jaw, who raised his rifle and fired without hesitation. The round sparked off the rocks 3 feet above Takala's head. She flinched, then remembered Jonas's training. Breathe, aim, fire. She brought the Winchester to her shoulder, found the scarred man in her sights, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked. The man jerked backward in his saddle, clutching his shoulder. Not a kill shot, but enough to take him out of the fight. Around her, the canyon erupted into chaos. Jonas's sharps boomed from above, the sound like thunder trapped between stone walls. 500 yards away, a soldier toppled from his horse, the big rifle's 50 caliber round punching through him like he was made of paper. Jonas worked the falling block action, chambered another round, fired again, another soldier down. The man could shoot, could kill with the cold precision of someone who had done it many times before and felt nothing but the recoil. Red Hawk and Naralnish opened fire from their positions on the canyon walls. Takala could not see them, hidden as they were among the boulders, but she saw the results. Graves' men scattered, seeking cover, their organized advance dissolving into desperate survival. One horse went down screaming, its rider trapped beneath it. Another soldier took a round through the leg and fell, crawling behind a rock outcropping while his blood painted the dust dark. Takota appeared beside Takala, his rifle barking steadily. Aim for the horses if you cannot hit the men. Without mounts, they cannot chase when we retreat. She had not thought of that. Shifted her aim, fired at the big bay a hired gun was riding. The horse reared and bolted, carrying its rider away from the fight. Another shot. Another horse down. It felt wrong killing animals who had done nothing to deserve it. But wrong had become relative. Survival was all that mattered. For 20 minutes, the firing was continuous, deafening. Takala went through 30 rounds, reloading twice, her hands moving automatically through the motions Jonas had drilled in her ear. Eject spent cartridge. Chamber new round. Aim. Fire. Over and over until the brass casings piled around her feet and the rifle barrel grew hot enough to burn. Then, as suddenly as it started, the shooting stopped. Graves's men had pulled back, dragging their wounded, seeking better cover among the rocks and scrub outside the canyon entrance. 4 soldiers lay still in the dust. 3 horses were down. The others had scattered. Of the 15 who had attacked, maybe 10 remained combat effective. But Jonas's group had not escaped unscathed. Nalnish is hit, Red Hawk called down from the canyon wall. Shoulder. He can still shoot, but not well. Jonas appeared at Takala's position, breathing hard, rifle in hand. Blood streaked his left arm where a bullet had grazed him, not deep, but bleeding freely. How many rounds you got left? Maybe 40 rifle, all 6 pistol. Good. Make every one count. They'll try again. Different approach this time. He looked at the sun, now well above the eastern rim. 3, maybe 4 more hours till dark. If we can hold till then, we slip out the back way through the rocks. They won't follow in darkness. Marshal Creed? Tomorrow if we're lucky, day after if we're not, we just have to last. He moved on, checking positions, redistributing ammunition. Takala reloaded her rifle with hands that shook slightly now that the immediate action had passed. The reality of what she had done settled over her. She had shot a man, had aimed at a living human being and pulled the trigger. The scarred hired gun was out of the fight, clutching his wounded shoulder as his companions dragged him to cover. Whether he would live or die depended on how quickly they got him to a doctor. She had made that choice for him, had changed his life forever with the squeeze of a trigger. You did well. Takota's voice was quiet beside her. First combat is always hardest. The doubt comes after, not during. That is how you know you are still human. Does it get easier? No, but you get stronger. Learn to carry it. The second assault came an hour later, and it came from an unexpected direction. While most of Graves' men kept up harassing fire from the front, drawing their attention, 3 soldiers climbed the canyon wall on the southern side using ropes and pitons. They were good climbers, quiet and careful, working their way up through a chimney crack that offered handholds and concealment. By the time Red Hawk spotted them, they were already 200 feet up, within rifle range of the defenders' positions. Climbers! Red Hawk's shout was followed immediately by rifle fire. One soldier lost his grip and fell, screaming all the way down, hitting rocks twice before the ground silenced him. The second made it to a ledge and started shooting, his position elevated enough that he could fire down into the basin where Takala crouched. Bullets sparked off stone inches from her head. She rolled behind better cover, brought her rifle up, tried to find an angle. The third soldier reached the canyon rim and disappeared over it. "He's above us," Jonas yelled. "Dakota, with me. Takala, hold this position." They moved fast, scrambling up a talus slope toward where the soldier had vanished. Takala kept her rifle trained on the ledge where the second climber was positioned, firing whenever she saw movement, forcing him to keep his head down. She burned through 10 rounds doing it, but she kept him pinned. Then she heard shouting from above. The sharp crack of pistol fire, very close. The sounds of struggle, bodies hitting stone, a single rifle shot. Then silence. Jonas reappeared at the canyon rim, limping now, blood on his leg. One down, the other ran. Took Dakota's rifle when he jumped back down the outside. "Dakota!" Knife wound, not deep, but he's out of the fight. They were down to 4 effectives now. Jonas wounded in 2 places, Naalnish unable to use his left arm. Redhawk still whole, but running low on ammunition. And Takala, 3 days trained, still learning what it meant to kill. The mathematics of survival were shifting against them. Graves seemed to sense it. His voice carried into the canyon, calm and confident. "How many you got left in there, Jonas? How much longer you think you can hold? I can wait all day, all week if I have to. But you're bleeding, your people are bleeding. Eventually you run out of bullets or blood, whichever comes first." Jonas did not answer, was reloading weapons, checking supplies, calculating odds that did not look favorable. "Or you can end this now," Graves continued. "Send out the girl, just her. The rest of you walk away. I give you my word as an officer and a gentleman. Your lives for hers. That's more than fair." From her position, Takala could see Jonas's face, see him considering it. Not because he wanted to give her up, but because he was doing the arithmetic, weighing her life against those of the men who had come to fight for her. She made the decision before he could. Stood up, stepped into the open where Graves could see her, raised her voice clear and strong. "I'll come out, but I want your word that everyone else goes free. No pursuit, no retaliation." "Takala, get down!" Jonas's roar was pure rage. She ignored him, kept her eyes on Graves. "Do I have your word, Colonel?" Graves smiled. It was a victor's smile, magnanimous and cold. "You have my word. Send the girl out, the rest of you can leave. I'll even let you take your wounded." "No!" Jonas grabbed her arm, spun her around. His winter blue eyes were blazing. "You're not doing this. You're bleeding. Dakota's down. Naalnish can barely hold a rifle. How long do we last? Another hour, 2? She pulled her arm free. "My father died for evidence that can bring down Graves and his network. That matters more than my life, more than any of our lives. Your father would never forgive me. My father would understand. You said it yourself, he always did." She touched Jonas's face, the gesture surprising them both. "You kept your promise. You kept me alive long enough to matter. Now let me choose how I spend what's left." For a long moment they stood locked in place, wills colliding. Then Redhawk's voice came from above, speaking Apache. "The girl speaks wisdom, Bear. Sometimes the only way to win is to sacrifice the queen to save the king. Let her go. We live to fight another day." Jonas closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had broken behind them. Or maybe healed. "If he kills you, I will hunt him to the end of the earth." "I know." She walked toward the canyon entrance, hands raised, rifle left behind. Each step felt like walking toward her own grave. Probably was. Graves had no reason to keep his word. Would likely shoot her the moment she was out of Jonas's line of fire. But if it bought time, if it gave the others a chance to escape, if the evidence survived to reach Marshal Creed, then her death would accomplish something. She emerged from the canyon into afternoon sunlight. Graves sat his horse 40 yards away, flanked by his remaining men. 9 of them left, more than enough to kill 1 Apache woman. "That's far enough," Graves called. "Kneel." She knelt in the dust, hands still raised, waited. Graves dismounted, walked toward her with the casual confidence of a man who had already won. He stopped 10 feet away, studying her like she was a specimen under glass. You look like your mother. Nalan was beautiful in her savage way. Shame she had to die in that raid. But then accidents happen during warfare. Civilians get caught in crossfire. Such a tragedy. The words hit like fists. You killed her. The raid that killed my mother. You ordered it. I facilitated it, provided intelligence to ensure maximum casualties. Your father was becoming problematic even back then, asking too many questions. I thought his wife's death might encourage him to keep his mouth shut. Instead, it made him more determined. Some men never learn. He pulled a pistol from his holster, Army-issue Colt, well-maintained, aimed it at her head. Oninwe, you should have stayed quiet like your mother. Should have accepted that some people are meant to rule and others meant to serve or die. But you had to inherit your father's stubbornness, had to become a problem. And I solved problems. The hammer came back with a click that sounded very loud in the stillness. Takala closed her eyes, thought of her father, of her mother, of Ashki, who she would never see again, of Jonas, who had tried so hard to keep a promise to a dead friend. She had lived 27 years. It was not enough, would never be enough, but it was what she had. Wait, the voice came from behind Graves. One of his soldiers, a young man with lieutenant's bars on his collar and eyes that looked haunted. Sir, I cannot stand by and watch this. Graves turned, irritated. Lieutenant Cole, you will return to your position. No, sir, I won't. Cole's hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. I have followed your orders for 2 years. I administered the poison that killed Kai Six Killer because you told me he was a spawn. I helped falsify reports about Apache raids to justify land seizures. I have done terrible things because I believed you were serving a greater purpose. But this, executing an unarmed woman in cold blood, I cannot do this. Then you're relieved of duty, effective immediately. Graves aimed his pistol at Cole now instead of Takala, and you'll face a court-martial for insubordination. I don't think so, Colonel. Cole pulled papers from his coat. These are copies of your ledgers, your letters, everything Kai Six Killer collected plus more I have gathered over the past months. I have been sending them to U.S. Marshal Isaiah Creed in Santa Fe. He has everything, the gun sales, the land fraud, the murders, all of it. Graves went very still. You betrayed me. I corrected my error in ever following you. Cole looked at Takala. I am sorry. For your father. For everything. I cannot undo what I have done, but I can stop it from continuing. The shot was very loud. Cole staggered, looking down at the red bloom spreading across his upper chest just below his right shoulder, where Graves had shot him. He fell to his knees, the papers spilling from his hands, scattering in the dust. Graves pivoted, bringing the pistol back toward Takala. Enough of this. The second shot came from the canyon. Jonas's sharps, the sound arriving a half-second after the bullet struck Graves in the shoulder, spinning him around, his pistol flying from his hand. He went down hard, cursing, clutching his shattered shoulder. Chaos erupted. The remaining soldiers, already demoralized by watching their colonel shoot his own officer, broke. 3 threw down their weapons and raised their hands. 2 ran for their horses. The last 3 started to raise their rifles but froze when Red Hawk and Naalnish appeared on the canyon walls with rifles aimed down. Do not, Red Hawk said calmly. We have you sighted. You die before you fire. The rifles lowered. Jonas came limping out of the canyon, rifle in one hand, his Colt in the other. Blood soaked his left pants leg from thigh to boot, but he was still moving, still fighting. He walked straight to Graves and stood over the fallen colonel. You should have left her alone, should have taken the evidence and run while you could, but you had to have it all, had to tie up every loose end. That pride is what kills men like you. Graves looked up at him, face twisted with pain and rage. This isn't over. I have friends in Washington, senators, congressmen. They will bury this, bury you. Maybe, or maybe Cole was telling the truth and Marshal Creed already has everything he needs. Jonas cocked his pistol. But you won't live to find out. Jonas, don't. Takala's voice stopped him. Don't make yourself a murderer for him. He is not worth your soul. He killed your father, your mother, God knows how many others. Yes, and he will answer for all of it. But in a courtroom, not here. Let justice do what it's meant to do. Jonas stood frozen, the pistol aimed at Graves's head, his finger white on the trigger. For a long moment it could have gone either way. Then slowly, carefully, he lowered the hammer and holstered the weapon. You're right, he's not worth it. The sound of hoof beats came from the south, many horses moving fast. Takala tensed, thinking Graves had reinforcements. But these riders wore different uniforms, federal marshal badges gleaming on their chest. 30 of them, led by a gray-haired man who radiated authority like heat from a forge. Marshal Isaiah Creed dismounted, took in the scene with a lawman's quick assessment. Bodies, wounded, a colonel bleeding in the dust, an Apache woman standing over him with a mountain man's protection. Jonas McHugh, you look like hell. Been a long 3 weeks, Isaiah. I apologize for the delay. We were ambushed outside Santa Fe by men we later learned were on Graves' payroll. Lost 3 good deputies. Took us time to regroup. He looked at Graves. Colonel Nathaniel Wade Graves, you are under arrest for murder, conspiracy, treason, gun running, and about 40 other charges I will enumerate once we get you to Santa Fe. You have the right to remain silent, though I don't imagine you will. 2 deputies moved forward with shackles. Graves submitted to being bound, his face gone gray with shock and pain. You have no authority here, he said. I am a commissioned officer in the United States Army. You cannot arrest me without military approval. Already have it. Creed produced a document with multiple signatures and seals. Direct from the Secretary of War. Turns out selling guns to hostiles and murdering civilians gets Washington's attention real quick when you have enough evidence. And thanks to Kai Six Killer, Lieutenant Cole, and about a dozen other witnesses who finally found the courage to talk, we have enough evidence to hang you 10 times over. They took Graves away, along with the soldiers who had surrendered. One deputy stayed behind to see to Cole, who was still alive, barely, the bullet having missed his heart by inches. He will survive, the deputy reported, and he will testify. Said he has been gathering evidence against Graves for 8 months, waiting for the right moment. Creed turned to Takala. Miss Six Killer, I owe you an apology. Your father contacted me 6 months ago about irregularities at Fort Apache. I should have moved faster. Should have protected him better. His death is partially my failure. You're here now. That is what matters. She looked at the papers scattered in the dust, the evidence Cole had died trying to preserve. Will it be enough? To convict him? More than enough. We have ledgers showing $178,000 in stolen funds. Letters proving conspiracy with land speculators and railroad companies. Testimony from soldiers about gun sales. Physical evidence of the weapons shipments. And now Cole's confession in front of witnesses. Graves will hang. So will about a dozen others in his network. This goes high, Miss Six Killer, all the way to the Bureau of Indian Affairs in Washington. The trial took place 6 weeks later in Albuquerque. The federal courthouse was packed with journalists, politicians, military brass, and curious citizens who had heard about the scandal and wanted to see justice performed. Takala entered wearing traditional Apache dress, her hair grown long enough now to braid again, and walked to the witness stand with her head high. The prosecutor, a federal attorney named Arthur Brennan, was methodical and thorough. He walked her through her father's last months. The suspicions, the investigation, the poisoning, her own enslavement, and the plan to keep her alive. The battle at Eagle's Nest Canyon. Every detail documented and corroborated. Graves's lawyer, an expensive attorney from Denver named Montgomery Ashford, tried to discredit her. Isn't it true, Miss Six Killer, that you are half Apache? That you have lived with Apache warriors who have fought against the United States? I am 3/4 Apache, and yes, I have lived near warriors who fought to defend their families and land, as any person would. Warriors who killed American soldiers. Soldiers who massacred women and children. My mother died in one such massacre. Would you not fight to protect your mother, Mr. Ashford? The courtroom erupted. The judge, a stern older man named Horace Blackwell, gavelled for order. The witness will answer the questions asked. Mr. Ashford, keep your examination relevant to the charges. Very well. Miss Six Killer, You claim Colonel Graves orchestrated your father's murder, but you have no direct evidence of this, do you? No confession, no witness to the actual poisoning. I have Lieutenant Cole's testimony. He administered the arsenic on Graves' orders. A man who is himself facing charges, who struck a deal with the prosecution for a reduced sentence in exchange for his testimony. Hardly reliable. Objection. Brennan stood. Lieutenant Cole's testimony is corroborated by medical evidence, by the poison bottle itself, and by documentary evidence showing Colonel Graves' pattern of eliminating threats to his operation. Sustained. Mr. Ashford, move on. The cross-examination continued for 2 hours, Ashford trying every angle to undermine Takalo's credibility. But she had lived through too much, survived too much, to be shaken by words. She answered every question clearly and calmly, never wavering, never contradicting herself. When it was Jonas's turn to testify, he brought the iron box. Set it on the evidence table with a heavy thunk. Inside were the ledgers Kai had copied, the letters he had intercepted, the witness statements he had gathered. A complete record of corruption spanning 3 years. Kai's sixth killer was my brother in everything but blood, Jonas said. He asked me to protect his daughter and finish what he started. I have done my best to honor both requests. Ashford tried to attack Jonas's credibility too. Mr. McHugh, isn't it true you are a wanted fugitive? That you deserted from the army in 1881? I was court-martialed for refusing an illegal order. The order to massacre a civilian Apache village. I served 6 months in the stockade for that refusal. After my release, I learned the massacre had been carried out anyway by other soldiers. I left the army then, yes. Called it desertion if you want. And this massacre, it never happened, did it? There is no record of it. Because men like Graves covered it up, burned the reports, threatened the witnesses. That is what this whole case is about, Mr. Ashford. Powerful men committing crimes and using their power to hide the evidence. Until someone like Kai's sixth killer or Lieutenant Cole finds the courage to preserve the truth. The trial's turning point came when Lieutenant Marcus Cole took the stand. He looked pale and thin, still recovering from his gunshot wound, but his voice was steady. I helped Colonel Graves murder Kai's sixth killer, he said without preamble. He told me Kai was a spy for hostile Apache, told me he was undermining army operations. I believed him because he was my commanding officer, and I was taught to follow orders. I administered arsenic mixed with quinine over the course of 3 weeks, watching a good man die slowly, telling myself I was serving my country. When did you realize you were wrong? Brennan asked. When I saw the evidence Kai had gathered. When I understood the scope of what Graves was doing, selling weapons to the enemy, staging raids, murdering civilians, all for profit. I tried to stop it, tried to gather my own evidence to give to Marshal Creed, but I was too late, too slow, and Kai's sixth killer paid the price for my cowardice. Cole broke down on the stand, weeping openly. It was the most damning testimony of all, because it was clearly genuine. A man confessing his sins not to escape punishment, but to achieve redemption. Ashford tried one last desperate attack. You made a deal with the prosecution, immunity in exchange for testimony. You are saving your own life by betraying your commander. I am trying to do the right thing, finally, after 2 years of doing wrong. If that costs me my life, so be it. But I will not let Graves escape justice for what he has done. The final witness was Graves himself. Against his lawyer's advice, he insisted on testifying. Took the stand with his shoulder still bandaged, his face gaunt but defiant. I served this country for 23 years, he began. I fought in wars, protected settlers, brought order to chaos. Everything I did for the future of this territory, to build something lasting. By selling guns to the enemy? Brennan asked. By creating situations that justified removing obstacles to progress. The Apache were dying anyway. Their way of life was finished. I simply accelerated the inevitable while profiting from it. That's not crime, that's pragmatism. And murdering Kai's sixth killer? He was a threat to national security. A half-breed who sided with the savages over his own countrymen. He got what traitors deserve. The courtroom erupted. Judge Blackwell gavelled furiously, but Graves was not finished. You want to know the truth? He stood, shrugging off his lawyer's restraining hand. I did it all. The guns, the land fraud, the murders, and I would do it again because this territory needs men with the courage to make hard decisions. The Apache had to go. Kai's sixth killer had to die. His mongrel daughter should have died too. I only regret that I failed to eliminate her when I had the chance. It was a complete confession, freely given. Witnessed by 200 people. Ashford's face went white. The jury looked stunned. Even Brennan seemed surprised by the magnitude of Graves' self-incrimination. Graves stood there, breathing hard, and for the first time, Takala saw him clearly. Not as a villain or a monster, but as a man who had convinced himself that evil was virtue, that cruelty was necessity, that his own comfort and profit were worth any price paid by others. He was not insane, he was worse. He was certain. The jury deliberated for 30 minutes, found him guilty on all charges: murder, conspiracy, treason, gun running, fraud. Judge Blackwell sentenced him to hang, along with 5 other officers and 12 civilians implicated in the network. The executions were scheduled for 4 weeks later. Takala did not attend, neither did Jonas. They were back at Black Mesa by then, repairing the cabin, rebuilding what had been damaged in their absence. Marshal Creed sent word when it was done, a simple telegram. Justice served. Graves hang noon today. Others to follow. Territory is safer because of you. They buried the telegram in a box with Kai's letters and the last photograph Takala had of her family. Then they planted an apple tree over it, a living memorial that would grow and bear fruit long after the pain had faded. They buried the telegram in a box with Kai's letters and the last photograph Takala had of her family. Then they planted an apple tree over it. 3 weeks later, Takala stood on the platform at Santa Fe Station. The eastbound train pulled in with a screech of steel and hiss of steam. Her hands twisted the fabric of her skirt, heart racing. Then she saw him. Ashke stepped down from the passenger car, thin and hesitant. 14 years old, but looking younger, hollowed out by months of forced assimilation. His hair had been cut short in the white man style. He wore clothes that hung loose on his frame. His eyes swept the platform like a wounded animal searching for predators. Ashke! She ran to him. He froze, stared at her as if she were a ghost. Then his face crumpled, and he fell into her arms, sobbing words in Apache she had feared he had forgotten. Sister, they told me you were dead. They said our family was gone. Shh, I am here. You are home now. You are safe. Jonas stood back near the station wall, giving them space. But Ashke pulled away from Takala and looked at the mountain man he had never met, but who had kept him alive from 1,000 miles away. You are the bear, Ashke said in halting English, the words careful and practiced. You sent the money every month. The school matron told me when I asked why I still had food when others did not. Jonas nodded once. Your father asked me to protect his family. That includes you. Ashke stepped forward and embraced Jonas with fierce gratitude. Over the boy's shoulder, Takala met Jonas's eyes, and something passed between them. An understanding, a promise kept, a family beginning to heal. 10 months after the trial, Takala stood on the porch of a small ranch house near the Mescalero Reservation. The house had been her father's, seized illegally and now returned to her by federal order, along with damages totaling $3,000. She had used the money to make repairs, to buy horses, to establish a home. Ashke was there, released from Carlisle, thin and haunted but alive. He barely spoke Apache anymore, had been beaten for using it. But Takala was teaching him again, slowly, patiently, helping him remember who he was before they tried to make him into something else. Jonas came to visit twice a week, riding down from Black Mesa with supplies or news or simply company. They sat on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun set, not needing to fill the silence with words. One such evening, as the sky turned orange and purple, Jonas cleared his throat. I spoke to the elders at the reservation, asked permission to court you properly. The Apache way. Takala stopped rocking. You did what? They gave me tasks, prove I could provide, protect, honor your culture. Took me 6 months, but they agreed. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a silver ring set with turquoise, traditional Apache work. Takala 6 killer, will you marry me? Not because of debt or obligation, but because I love you. Because you are the strongest person I have ever known. Because I want to spend whatever years I have left trying to deserve you. She looked at the ring, at his face, at this man who had been willing to be hated to keep her alive, who had kept a promise to a dead friend at the cost of his own comfort and safety, who had seen her not as property or savage or half-breed, but as a person worth protecting. Yes. They married 2 months later in a ceremony that blended Apache and settler traditions. Elder Nietzsche blessed them in the old way. A minister from Santa Fe spoke words from the Bible. 50 Apache from the reservation attended. 30 settlers from the nearby town. Marshal Creed came, and Red Hawk, and the warriors who had fought beside them. Ashke gave Takala away, standing in for their father. He would have loved you, he told Jonas in halting English. Take care of my sister, or I will find you. He said it with a smile, but meant it. Jonas smiled back and promised. They exchanged rings and vows, kisses while the sun set and both communities cheered. For one evening at least, in one small corner of the territory, the divisions did not matter. Only the love did. A year later, Takala was pregnant, 7 months along, moving slowly, one hand always on her belly where the baby kicked. She and Jonas sat on the porch of their ranch, watching Ashke teach Apache children how to track deer, how to read the signs the land left. The ranch had grown. They had built a schoolhouse, small but solid, where Takala taught reading and writing in both English and Apache, where she taught the old ways of healing alongside arithmetic and history. 20 students came 3 days a week, Apache children, white children, Mexican children, learning together that the world was bigger than the hate they had been taught. Chi Six Killer Memorial School read the sign above the door. A letter had come that morning from Washington. Congress had established a scholarship fund in her father's name. $5,000 annually to send Apache students to universities in the East. It was not enough, would never be enough. But it was a start. You think he would be proud? Takala asked Jonas. My father, of what we have built here. Jonas took her hand. I think he would be amazed. You have done more in 2 years than most people do in a lifetime. We have done it, you, me, Ashke, Red Hawk, everyone who fought for this. The baby kicked hard. Takala winced. Jonas put his hand on her belly, felt the movement, and his face transformed with wonder the way it did every time, like he could not quite believe this was real. Boy or girl, he asked. Does it matter? No, long as they are healthy. They will have a good life, better than we did. That's all I want. For them to grow up in a world where they are not hated for their blood, where they can be both Apache and white without shame. We're building that world, one student at a time, one lesson, one child who learns that people are people regardless of how they look. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun touched the mountains and turned the world gold. Inside the schoolhouse, children laughed. In the pasture, horses grazed. Smoke rose from the chimney of a home they had made together from courage and stubbornness and love. Sometimes the cruelest act is the greatest kindness. Sometimes a lie saves more lives than the truth. And sometimes love is born from the ashes of hatred, stronger for having been tested, deeper for having been earned. This was their story, a story of blood and betrayal, justice and redemption. A story that reminded anyone who heard it that we are not defined by what we suffer, but by how we choose to heal. The end came quietly 23 years later. Jonas died at 75, in his sleep, surrounded by family. Takala held his hand as his breathing slowed and stopped. Ashke stood at the foot of the bed. Their 3 children, grown now with children of their own, filled the room with quiet tears. They buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch with a view of Black Mesa in the distance. The stone was simple. Jonas McHugh. He kept his promises. Takala lived another 12 years, long enough to see the school expand to 40 students, to see the Apache language taught in public schools, to see some small measure of the justice her father had died pursuing. She died at 66, teaching a class on medicinal herbs, collapsing mid-sentence, and gone before the children could run for help. They buried her next to Jonas under the apple tree they had planted together. The tree was massive now, producing fruit every year that the students harvested and shared. The stone read, Takala Six Killer McHugh. She taught us to be strong. Their story became legend, passed down through generations of students who attended the school, through families on the reservation who remembered the woman who had bridged two worlds, through settlers who had learned that courage came in all colors and justice was colorblind. And on quiet evenings when the wind blew right, people swore they could hear two voices on the porch of the old ranch house, laughing, telling stories, keeping each other company in death as they had in life. The ranch still stands, the school still teaches, and the apple tree still bears fruit, nourished by the sacrifice of those who believed that love could overcome hate, that truth could defeat corruption, that one person's courage could change the world. Sometimes it takes a lifetime to keep a promise. Sometimes it takes two. But in the end, the promises that matter most are the ones we keep not because we must, but because we choose to. Because honor demands it. Because love requires it. Because it is simply the right thing to do. This is the legacy Jonas and Takala left behind. Not in stone or metal, but in the lives they touched, the children they taught, the example they set, a legacy that whispers still across the high country where they lived and loved and fought and finally found peace. The devil of Black Mesa became a hero. The Apache woman they tried to break became a teacher. And together they proved that sometimes the greatest stories are not about conquest or glory, but about ordinary people who choose every single day to be better than the world expects them to be. Their names are carved in the school they built. Their spirits live in the mountains they loved. And their story endures as long as there are people who believe that justice matters, that courage counts, and that love in the end conquers all.